Penn State fans, I'm Bob Flounders, joined by Max Ralph on a late Tuesday post USC. Time for an episode of the Blue White Breakdown. Max and I have successfully navigated our way back to the East Coast. Uh, sometimes it's never easy. I'm in Harrisburg. Max is in State College. What a USC trip, Max. First of all, we got to talk a little bit about that, but we also have some news. We have some recruiting news to get to.
Mhm.
We can talk about the Wisconsin start time, maybe some things that Penn State's program can fix on their second bye week. They are off this week, and I think this is a good time for it because that was they put a lot into that win over USC, and they got to get ready for an improving team on the road in prime time. We can get to that too. I would just say this, Max, before we get underway. Max and I highly encourage the Penn State fans out there who haven't yet done it to become one of our PennLive Penn State Tech subscribers. It's easy to join. There's information on how to do it pretty much in every one of the posts we put up on PennLive. It's highly affordable. We are highly entertaining. I know Max was talking. I guess somebody asked me already for recommendations in Madison. If they want to get some cocktails before Penn State's game, they're going to have a nice runway to do it because the game's going to be later in the day. But you should join. You should become a tech subscriber. We build some podcasts around that. I know you and Johnny did that last week, Max. Mm-hmm. We try and reach out to them on a daily basis. We appreciate their comments and their questions. They're very plugged in. So if you want to do that, and you can get all of our podcasts, right, Max, on Spotify. There's just about anywhere you look for podcasts. Just put in Blue White Breakdown, and you'll see our lovely faces. Or you could just listen. That might be better. But it's your choice. There's videos, there's podcasts, however you want to do it. Max, that was a lot of filibustering. I think James Franklin would have been proud of me there. We're already 2 minutes in. Johnny and I talked about Penn State USC on our video after the game. Incredible, incredible game. One of the best games I've seen during the James Franklin era. There's been quite a few. But just maybe a thought or two before we get into Penn State's bye week fixes and some other things.
Yeah, like you said, it's a bye week, but we got a lot of good stuff that we can talk about today. I do think, obviously, I'm only in year 4 of covering Penn State football. I'm only 22. I haven't been to all that many football games, but I do think that was the best one that I've seen in person. That was just a hell of an afternoon. I mean, there's really no way to sugarcoat it. The back and forth on the offense was so good. The big plays when they needed it. I just keep going. I wrote about him. I did a pretty deep dive into what he did on Saturday, but I just can't think about that game without going back to Julian Fleming. Talk about a guy who everybody knows his story, like going to Ohio State as the top prospect in Pennsylvania, and now the injuries, the down numbers, whatever, slow start to this year, and he just makes 2 incredible catches on 4th downs. Drew Aller himself threw 2 pretty bad interceptions that could have cost Penn State. Defense stood tall, only allowing 6 points, and then Drew leads that drive in the 4th quarter. You can point to so many different aspects of that game where Penn State, when it needed it, got exactly what it needed. Another one, Nick Singleton. He did not have a good day, but and he was on the sideline for a good portion of the game.
Right.
But he made that play. He had that touchdown right at the end. You could tell he left it all out there on the field when he was running. He almost fell down. He was running so hard. So I do think, you hit the nail on the head again, as far as this bye week comes at a good time, because you can just kind of tell in the celebration and talking to the guys after the game, they were exhausted, and rightfully so. It was a long game. It was a physical game, especially on the defensive side. They're chasing down Woody Marks a lot of times.
Yeah.
Which I know, Bob, you've said it. He's a really good back. Penn State was tested for for a good reason by him.
Yeah.
There's just like I think we're going to keep talking about this game for most of the year because it's a turning point, I think, for Penn State, showing who they are as a team, especially in those
Yeah.
late moments. I'm not sure. I'm not sure Penn State teams of yore win that game in that way.
You're only 22. You can't use the word your.
In your, I mean, like the
I
past
know.
like 5,
I
6 years, Bob.
I got you.
And I'm just not sure that a Penn State team from the past 5 or 6 years really wins that game. I mean, that was impressive, and it
Yeah.
was a hell of a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. I would just say this before we move on. I am not 22. I've actually been on the beat longer than you've been breathing air, which says a lot about my age. But I only bring that up because I wanted to just say it like this. There were a lot of Penn State fans at the LA Coliseum. The announced attendance, I think, was 75,000. And usually, that's a long trip. I know there's a lot of Penn State fans, I think, on the West Coast, and a lot of them probably showed up. But usually, on road games, it can be a little tough for Penn State fans to get tickets. This was a hot game, and you only see maybe 5, 6, 7, maybe 10,000 Penn State fans at a game just because of availability. There were more than that at this game. And to those who went to the game and might be a little bit older, maybe you've been lucky enough, like I have. I was lucky enough to be at the Penn State Rose Bowl in January of 2017 when Saquon Barkley went off in a game that they lost, but it was just an incredible game against USC, 101 points, big play after big play. Even though they lost, the people who were there will never forget that. I'll never forget it. In 2017, the next year, I was lucky enough to be at the Penn State-Iowa game that they won on the last play when Juwan Johnson teamed up with Trace McSorley for that touchdown. I'm not even sure Trace was throwing to him. You look at that, I'm still not sure. But Saquon Barkley was incredible in that game. In the return game as a pass catcher, he was jumping over dudes that are playing in the NFL now, rushed the ball. And I say that because I've also been lucky enough to see Tyler Warren produce easily one of the greatest single game efforts in Penn State history when you talk about his game. And Max, who else in the country? I dare someone to come up with this. Who else in the country can impact the game as a pass catcher, as a runner? He can throw the ball, he can snap the ball, and he's also a pretty darn good blocker in the run game. Those are 5 areas. When you want to talk about a complete player, there's going to be guys that go ahead of him in the NFL draft, but on the college level, when Penn State really needed it, I mean, this is a top 5, top 3 individual effort of all time. Barkley might be in that conversation too. I just hope if Penn State fans watch that or they were there, I just hope they appreciate really what they were able to see, because I don't know that we're ever going to see a game like that from a Penn State player ever. And if we do see it, it might be a while. So I just can't say enough about what Tyler Warren means to this team. And just remember, right, Max, he could have easily went into the draft last year. I think he had a pretty tough decision there. He could have left. I think he probably would have went higher than Theo Johnson did. He decided to come back. Just an incredible story. But I just wanted to share that. We were kind of pressed for time after the game. We had some deadline concerns. I didn't get to all of that, and I didn't want to bore Johnny McGonigal to tears for like 12 straight minutes. So I just bored you. But I just had to get it out. It's been in the time that's lapsed since the game ended, it's been just like bubbling up inside me about what that young man Tyler Warren did. So I got it off my chest. Max, we've shared some thoughts. Let's move on. Before we get to the recruiting news, let's just talk a little bit about, it's a bye week, but I know Penn State fans are doing it, but I think you and I, Johnny, we're all starting to look ahead a little bit too. Penn State's now number 3. There is a big game looming in the first Saturday in November, but before they get there, they got a really challenging test coming off of the bye week in Madison, Wisconsin. And we're not going to talk a lot about it, but just the news that it's going to be a night game, to me, means it's even going to be a bigger test now. So just if you just want to share some of those details with our listeners and the Penn State fans.
Yeah, they're getting NBC at night, which I assume is going to be Noah Eagle and Todd Blackledge. They're always a pleasure for me to listen to, so I hope the Penn State fans feel the same way. Obviously, Todd has pretty big history with the Nittany Lions, but no, Wisconsin. It's an interesting matchup for sure because a lot of people are going to say, well, they haven't been ranked yet this year. They got beat by USC, who Penn State just beat. In both of those games, Wisconsin and Penn State were in the Coliseum, which it kind of contributes to things. But the record's 4-2. It's good. It's not incredible. But like if you really dive into how this season has gone for Wisconsin, their 2 losses are on the road at a good USC team. I know the record won't show it, but USC is good this year. And at home against Alabama, who is a top 10 team and beat Georgia. Obviously they lost to Vanderbilt. They've had their hiccups, almost lost to South Carolina, but like this is still one of the most purely talented teams in the nation that Wisconsin had to play. Outside of that, these Badgers have looked really good.
Yeah.
You look at what they did against Purdue. Purdue and Rutgers on back-to-back weeks. They just absolutely blew the doors off of them.
Yeah.
Now, Purdue is not a good football team this year. I believe that also came before they fired their offensive coordinator, which Purdue ended up playing pretty tight with Illinois this past weekend, post-firing of Graham Harrell. But Wisconsin never gave them the chance. And Rutgers had a really good start to the year. What were they, 5-0 to begin?
They were.
And Wisconsin just, like I said, blew their doors off. So I think the big key here is Wisconsin lost its starting quarterback in that Alabama game, Tyler Van Dyke, to a season-ending knee injury. Braden Locke came in, didn't look very good. They just didn't have the offense prepared to be around him. And then I think that kind of trickled over into the USC game the very next week. But now that he's gotten a chance to get comfortable and confident in that role, you can see their offense was really freaking good the last 2 weeks. And I do think it was pretty much a true competition out there in Madison in the offseason for the quarterback spot. So we're going to have a lot more to talk about with that Wisconsin game going into next week. But I will say, just don't overlook these guys because they've put good things on film over the past couple of weeks. They finally, they're rolling with Braden Locke as the starter. They've had that kind of buffer period to get comfortable with him. So I'm really excited for it. And, we've both been to Madison now. It's a fun town. Camp Randall Stadium can be a fun one too, especially at night.
Yeah. Yeah. I would just say, to me, everything you got to everything I would have said. They're an evolving team since the quarterback change. And I think you saw that in the USC game where they played a really good half. And then they just weren't there yet. But I think that you're seeing them continue to grow, learn how to finish. There is talent there. They're tough at home. They can reset their season and reshape their season with a win over the number 3 team in the country. And you absolutely know that is what they are. That's what they're thinking about. I think Penn State knows they're going to get their best shot. But that's a subject, I think, Max, for coming off the bye week. We're going to look more at Wisconsin. I think that, Max and I are going to do a little bit of we'll be studying just to see how dangerous this team is. But Max, to your point, Madison's fun. If you guys are going to the game, anyone that's listening or watching, it's going to the game and you've never been to Madison, it's a perfect storm of events have happened now because now it's a night game. So you're going to have all day and maybe Friday, the day before, to explore. There's a lot of stuff to do in Madison. It's one of my very favorite, if not the favorite, road destination in the Big Ten. And I may be giving out some recommendations, spoiler alert, later off the bye week on a podcast. If you're lucky, because I know where to find trouble on the road and good kind of trouble. But Max, I'm going to tee you up. Even though it's a bye week, there's always news with Penn State. We're going to hear from their coordinators in the middle of the week. I believe both Andy Kotelnicki, who had himself a day against USC, and Tom Allen, who also had himself a day, but for different reasons. I think we're going to hear from them. Max, I think you got a practice availability where you're probably going to hear from Coach Franklin. Who knows how that's going to go? But also, there's news on the recruiting front. They never stop recruiting. The news is good. They got a D back, I think, from defensive back for the 2025 class. It's actually a flip, and I believe the newest pledge had visited during the UCLA week. But Max, why do you share some info about the latest Penn State verbal commitment?
Yeah, you've got all of the details right there, Bob. He is from Ironton, Ohio, which, as an Ohio native, truthfully, I do not know where that is, and I meant to look it up. Probably on the other side of the state from where I've resided for the last 15 years. So cut me some slack.
I do not know where that is.
No, he's a 3-star safety, Josh Johnson. Like you said, he's a flip. There were about a week between his Louisville decommitment and his commitment to Penn State. So, maybe the recruiting purists would not call that a true flip, but I'd call it a flip. He was on campus while he was still committed to Louisville for that UCLA game. He only took 2 official visits over the summer to the Cardinals and the Nittany Lions. And I do know that there was a lot of momentum when he came to campus here over the summer. Staff liked him a lot. He liked them a lot. I don't know what happened with him committing to Louisville to begin with. But the bottom line is he's back here now. And I do know that the staff is going to be really happy to have him on board. It's a big help as well. This class is mostly kind of shaken out and completed. They have 25 commits. There's 1 or 2, maybe 3 other guys around the state that they're going to try and flip. But this was a good one to add because he's at a position where they had Antonio Branch Jr. committed as that one of those safeties in the class earlier. And then in September, he ended up decommitting, flipping himself to Colorado and Deion Sanders. So this was a position that, Penn State really could have used in this class. There's 5 DBs now, a couple of them cornerbacks, a couple of them safeties. I would doubt, just from an exterior perspective, that they're really trying to do a whole lot more in the secondary for this class. I do know there's that Oregon commit from, the McDonough pipeline down there in Maryland, Brandon Finney, who plays corner. I know Penn State's not going to give up on him, but I don't know really what the chances are of flipping him at this point. But this pickup with Josh Johnson is a good one. It's an important one. Position of need. I know the staff likes him. Obviously, the staff likes anybody that they pick up, but he's a lower ranked 3-star. And so when Penn State picks up a guy like that, they've done a really good job in the past of scouting and developing recruits. So I wouldn't overlook him just for his rating. And I do think that this was good news that has been in the works for quite a while.
Guys, you're listening to the Blue White Breakdown. Max Ralph, who is just 22 and does not know all of the cities in Ohio. We just learned that, and he's from Ohio. I don't blame you. I don't know all the. I know there's a lot about Pennsylvania. I'm from here that I don't know about. But yeah, I wanted to. It's the Blue White Breakdown, and I just to tweak what you just said and add on to it. Mm-hmm. Max, if you're Penn State fans, if you're a safety recruit, why wouldn't you come to Penn State? Just look at the first 6 games of Penn State season. Look at what Kevin Winston and Jalen Reed did in the West Virginia game. Look what they did. They wrecked the game. Winston got, I think, Player of the Week. Jalen Reed probably should have got it. Zakee Wheatley, who at the start of the season was their 3rd safety, but is now their 2nd safety, had a big interception in the Bowling Green game, a huge stop on 4th down in the UCLA game early that really, really, really was an overlooked play in the game. And then Jalen Reed again in the USC game, a safety. Look what he did to foil that USC drive late in regulation when they were driving for a potential game-winning field goal. He also, and I wrote about it today on PennLive, that blitz where he at the last second, you could see it on the game replay. He motioned to AJ Harris to switch to switch positions with him and go deep to play safety so he could blitz because he saw it was going to be a pass. I think it was 3rd and 11, and he wanted to blitz off the edge. And he drew that holding call. If he didn't, I mean, he was probably going to be a sack either way, but that negated a 40-yard pass play inside the 5. That probably would have been USC points. They get those points. I don't know that Penn State wins the game. My point, though, why wouldn't you want to come to Penn State to play safety for Coach Poindexter? These guys are showing up in big spots, all over the field in big games. I think that really resonates. They are developing their safeties very quickly. They're playing in the league. Jair Brown was on the sideline for the USC game. So, I mean, all those bullet points. If you're undecided and you're a safety, you probably want to come. That Penn State's a destination for you. I just wanted to flesh that out before we got to our bye week tweaks for Penn State, because they're 6-0. Nobody's perfect, Max. I think there are some areas to improve. I wrote about something on PennLive. Let me just run this by you about things maybe they want to look at, need to look at. I'm going to throw all 4 of them out here, and you just tell me, first of all, tell me if you agree with any of my 4, and if you really like one of them, or you would prioritize one of them, what would it be? So my 4 talking points for maybe tweaking, they have to start faster on offense. They have to find a way to get points in the first quarter. I think they have 17 points in the last 4 games in the first quarter. I think that number is right. The running game has not been great the last 2 weeks. Credit UCLA and USC for slowing these guys down. Singleton didn't play against UCLA, but they're going to need more in the run game in the second half. I think they can get more, but the last 2 games really not great. Max, we've noticed in the press box sitting next to each other, they just don't get anything from the return game, especially the punt return game. I think they're still trying to figure some options out, but I think they're gonna need to get a couple big plays, whether in the punt return game or in the kickoff return game. And then I would just point out that he is playing a role, and not all of the stats show up. I think in terms of official stats, whether it's rushing yards or passing yards, he's playing a lot. But is there a way maybe they could get one of their more talented players, Bo Prabula, involved in the offense just a little bit more? So those 4 things, Max, if you like any of them, if you don't, it's okay. Is there anything maybe out of those 4 that really jumps out to you?
Oh, Bob, I give yourself some credit. You know what you're watching.
I don't want to humble brag, Max. I don't want to do it. It's the bye week. I don't think the Penn State fans are ready for me to humble brag it. Do anything.
I'll do it for you. I think those are the big things. I mean, you could lump in the defense's slow starts with the offenses, but those have been, outside of this USC game, those have been mostly less impactful. The USC and the Bowling Green games, it was noticeable, but haven't had an issue outside of that. But yeah, I think those 4 things are probably the biggest things that you can really look at and say, oh, Penn State has kind of struggled in these spots. I do think the running game will kind of solve itself if Nick Singleton can become fully healthy following this bye week. He was at practice. He wasn't listed as questionable or out this weekend. He played, but it didn't seem like he was at a full snap count. Really, when he was on the field, he didn't look right. That's just speculation from us. But
I agree. I agree with you.
Yeah, but if he can get healthy after this bye week, that's going to be a huge boost to the run game. Period. Obviously, Katron Allen's vision is great, but it's different when you have the big play threat of Nick Singleton back there. I do think this offensive line is very capable of opening holes in the run game. This weekend, they needed it through the air, and Drew gave it to them. So you do have to be complimentary of what Penn State has been able to do, winning games in different ways this year offensively. That said, the slow starts on offense, Andy Kotelnicki put together one of the best drives I've ever seen on that opener. I know you're in agreement. Mm-hmm. And it was only wiped off the board by a pretty questionable penalty from Julian.
I know. I've been arguing with John Sauber about it. I think I think it's like 51-49. I think technically the call was right, but there's a lot of ways you can interpret that call. I listened to what Gary Danielson said about it. I watched the play closely. It's a call they're going to have to live with. Julian Fleming wouldn't say much about it. He was very, very political about it. It was probably a 50-50 call that could, if they didn't make it, the call, you would say, yeah, they shouldn't have made it. But if they did make it, you could say, well, technically it might have been that. But it was a very polarizing call, I'd say, Max.
Oh, I think that's the right way to put it, because it is true. The DB did get his hands on him first, but Julian didn't necessarily do a lot to fight away from the contact. So it's ticky-tack. I think you said it the right way. It probably could have gone either way, but you got to live with it.
Yep.
But still, the point is that opening drive should have had a touchdown.
Yes.
They did get points. They did slow down a little bit from there, but again, you had the interceptions. There were just some things that I do think that Penn State's offense on the whole looked better early in the game against USC and just didn't have the points to show for it. So I am curious to see how that continues. Obviously, they're going to need it against Wisconsin and OSU. And then just to touch on those last two, Zion Tracy back there as the punt returner right now with Caden Saunders down. He definitely has more big play potential than Caden does, especially since Caden's been hampered all year.
Yeah.
But you could see Zion still kind of new to that role. There were at least one or two punts over the past couple of weeks where he fair caught it or didn't fair catch when we thought he should have. Some of the understanding of when there is a return there clearly is still in development for him. But the staff does think that he can bring them big plays there. I mean, he's one of the faster guys on the team.
Yes.
We've heard it from a lot of people. I think that as the season goes on, that will get better. But right now, it's absolutely a problem because Penn State's starting field position has hurt them. That's been a huge key in these games where the offense starts slow, is that the starting field position, I think their best field position before the interception by Jalen Reed against USC was their own 25 for a touchback.
Yeah.
That's been a problem. They're driving long fields this year. And part of that is because of the return game. And Prabula, he's a good player. He's talented. They find different ways to get him on the field. But I would argue that at times it does kind of break up Drew's rhythm if he's in a groove, he's throwing the ball well, he's seeing the field. I think bringing Bo in for a play kind of can mess with that. Don't take the ball out of your 5-star quarterback's hands, but there is a role for Bo. That Tyler Warren play probably doesn't happen if defenses aren't respecting what Bo can do from the quarterback position.
Yeah.
So there's pros and cons. We're not calling the offense for a reason, Bob, but I do think that Bo serves his purpose, but I'm always struggling with the idea of taking the ball out of your 5-star quarterback's hands when he's been playing really, really well this year.
Yeah. I just had a vision of in a perfect world, Andy Kolodnicki's watching this podcast, seeing me talk about, boy, they really should be using Bo a little bit more. And he's just probably just shaking his head, smoke's coming out of his ears. It's what does Flounders know? Max is right. Maybe he does listen. I would like it if he would listen. I feel like he would be. I'd love to get some feedback from him. But Max,
I think he'd love our podcast.
Yeah,
Bob.
yeah. He already loves my Bucky's hat. Why wouldn't he love our podcast? But Max, this bye week podcast has sailed by. I think we got to everything we wanted to get to. As I said, there's more stuff coming on PennLive for the bye week. There's some availabilities. There's a practice availability. But guys, what a game. Hope you listened. Hope you enjoyed listening and watching us. Look for more of our stuff on PennLive. Think about being a PennLive Penn State Tech subscriber. Max, good chatting with you. We got to run, but I think we might have another podcast later in the week. We don't know. We're making it up as we go, people. We're making it up as we go.